Hey, what's up everyone? This is RyGuy. Just getting ready to do our preview picks and predictions for UFC Fight Night, Dos Anjos versus Lee, tomorrow night in the Blue Cross Arena in Rochester, New York. So let's jump right into it. Start with the prelims. Alright, so Julio Arce versus Julian and Rosa. Juicy J. Look at this, they're both pretty experienced fighters. This guy's got 30 pro fights under his belt. This guy's got 18. It looks like this might be his first fight in the UFC. I don't see a winner or loss there. Huge difference in height. 5'7", at featherweight, 145 pounds. That's pretty common for a guy to be around that height. 6'1", that's really big. That's the same height as Zabit Magomed Sharapov. And then he does have a good reach for his height, 70 inches. This guy, 75. That's okay for his height, but it's decent overall. He'll have a 5-inch reach advantage over his opponent. When we look at this, I'm gonna go with Julian and Rosa. I think he's gonna win by decision. Up next, we got Zack Cummings versus Trevon Giles. Trevon Giles is undefeated, and Zack Cummings got 28 pro fights under his belt. You look, they're the same height, have pretty much the same reach. 1 inch doesn't make a difference, especially where most fighters don't really know how to use their reach to their advantage. Let's see, when we take a look at this, looks like this guy is a decent striker, although submissions, he's got the same number of same percentage of submission victories as he does knockout, and not a lot of decisions, only 9%. So this guy is finishing a lot of his opponents. I'm gonna go with Trevon Giles, and I'm gonna say that he wins by second round TKO. All right, we got Durkin, Patrick Cummins with the funny mustache against short fuse Ed Herrmann. It's kind of funny. He doesn't really look like a fighter when you look at him. I mean, I'm sure he's a badass. He's a big guy. They fight at middleweight. Same height and pretty much the same reach, only a half an inch, which again is nothing. They're both coming off of losses. So it looks like Patrick Cummins is probably a better striker, whereas Ed Herrmann is a little bit better of a grappler. He's got more submission victories. I'm going to go with Patrick Cummins. And I'm going to say he wins by third round TKO. Up next, we got Michael Trizano, the Lone Wolf, versus Grant Dawson, KGD. So Michael Trizano undefeated. Grant Dawson, he's only got 1 loss. He's got more pro fights too. And what the hell is this? 0-inch reach, 0-inch leg reach? I'm sorry, does he not have any arms or legs? I see arms right here. That's unacceptable. They should have the reach on there, and the leg reach, but especially the reach. Wow, so when we look at this, 69% submission. So he's a great grappler. Mike Trizano, we've seen his fights. He does, yes, 56%. He does win by decision more. But I'm thinking in this fight, he's going to try to keep it standing more. They are about the same height, only 1 inch difference. Unfortunately, we can't tell this because they didn't give us that information. I really like Michael Trizano. I think he is a good fighter, a decent up-and-comer. He could end up becoming a star in the future. I'm going to go with Michael Trizano by decision. Alright, and then we got Danny Roberts, Hot Chocolate, versus Michael Pereira, the Demolador. And look at that. Is it Michael Pereira or is it Noob Saibot from Mortal Kombat? They couldn't even get a picture up for us. That's unacceptable. And look, he doesn't have any arms or legs either. No reach, no leg reach. And has a record of 0. This is his first ever pro fight. First ever pro fight in the UFC. Wow. He must be the second person in history after CM Punk. That's crazy. Well, either way, I'm going to go with Danny Roberts, and I'm going to say second round TKO. Alrighty, next we got Desmond Green, the Predator, versus Charles Jourdain, Air. It's kind of a weird nickname, Air. Okay, moving on. There's no record here. I don't know what's up with that. I don't know if that's a glitch. And look at the weight, LB. LB, pound. 5'11" versus 5'9", so 2 inches taller. Not a huge difference, but a 2-inch difference. I saw the weigh-ins. He weighed in. Jourdain, I believe, made weight, so he weighed in at like 55 or 56. But he'll have a 4-inch reach advantage, and well, leg reach is pretty much the same, but that doesn't matter as much. Leg reach doesn't really matter as much, for the most part. And Desmond Green is a great fighter all around. And I believe he is at home for this fight. So Desmond Green's got the home crowd behind him. He's got his family there. I'm going to go with Desmond Green, second round TKO. And then we have the final fight on the prelims, Aspen Ladd versus Sinjar Eubanks, Sarge. Obviously, Sinjar Eubanks was in the flyweight division. She had some issues making weight a couple times. I believe in her last fight, she said that, I think she said she got her period right before weigh-ins, which affected that. But so she moved up to bantamweight, 135, which was good. She made weight this time. You know, less of a weight cut on her. Aspen Ladd is ranked number 6 and is an up-and-comer. She's undefeated. She was supposed to have that fight against Holly Holm, but it fell through. But they got her booked with Sinjar Eubanks, who was supposed to fight Valentina Shevchenko for the flyweight belt before they canceled that fight. And Sinjar Eubanks was really upset about that, and she didn't like how Joe Rogan said that he didn't know who she was, and you know, had a little beef there, but that all got squashed. But Sinjar is a pretty good fighter, and it'll be interesting to see how she does at bantamweight, where she doesn't have that weight cut affecting her. We look at this, 2 inches taller. Although Sinjar has the reach advantage, but it's only 1 inch, so it really doesn't matter. So they're pretty well matched up. If anything, it's better to be taller. So she's 2 inches taller, which again isn't a huge difference, but it's better to be a little bit taller than it is to have the reach, believe it or not. So if she were 5'6" and she's 5'4", and she, you know, it's better to be taller and have a slightly shorter reach than to be shorter and have a slightly longer reach. But looking into this fight, I believe they're both good grapplers. Both have good wrestling. This is actually going to be a really good fight, you guys. This is going to be a good fight. I'm going to go with Aspen Ladd. I think she's going to get it done via decision. But this is going to be a good fight. Alright, so we're moving on to the main card. So we've got Davey Ramos, the Tasmanian Devil, versus Austin Hubbard, Thud, or possibly Noob Saibot. And again, doesn't have any arms or legs, 0-inch reach, 0-inch leg reach. So when we look here, he's 5'6". At lightweight, he's 5'10", so 4-inch height advantage. Reach, we would know because they failed to give us that, which is sad. Records are pretty much the same, 9-2-0 versus 10-2-0. Obviously, he's got a lot of great submissions, 78% submission victories. Whereas he's got 40% by TKO and 40% also by decision. I'm going to go with Davey Ramos. I'm going to go with the Tasmanian Devil. And I am going to say he wins by first round submission. Up next, we got Charles Oliveira du Bronx versus Nick Lentz, the Carney. This is going to be a pretty decent fight. They're both coming off of victories, impressive victories. Charles Oliveira submission, and he has the record in the UFC for the most submission victories. Nick Lentz, I believe he's coming off of a TKO victory. He had a good performance. Charles Oliveira, 2 inches taller, have a 6-inch reach advantage. That's big. That's a big reach advantage. See, 69% submission. Nick Lentz, it's more broken up. You know, kind of a average of each, 37, 27, 37. I'm going to take Charles Oliveira, and I'm going to say second round submission. Alright, and we've got up next, we've got the Silent Assassin, Vicente Luca, versus Derrick Krantz, D-Rock. And this is interesting because it was supposed to be Vicente Luca versus Neil Magny, and it was going to be in the co-main event, but that got canceled due to Neil Magny failing his drug test with USADA. So they're still trying to work that out to see why he tested positive and, you know, where the source came from. But unfortunately, not going to get to see that fight. But they did pull in Derrick Krantz pretty quickly, so they got a good replacement. Pretty much the same height. Looks like they got the LB there again. That's funny. Reach 75.5 versus 72, so he's going to have a 3.5 inch reach advantage. That's pretty good. Looks like he has more more knockouts of anything, obviously. Some submission and very low to so he's a finisher. We don't have any information to go off of as far as his past. He does have a lot of pro fights under it, even though we don't have his record. I remember reading up on that he does have a lot of pro fights under his belt. I'm going to go with Vicente Luca, and I'm going to say he wins by second round knockout. All right, and we've got the women's featherweight division, which has very few fighters in there. I don't believe that the featherweight division is even listed on the website now. They took it right out of the rankings, I believe. We've got Megan Anderson versus Felicia Spencer. Megan Anderson, obviously, she's become a bigger name in the UFC because she is a 6 foot tall featherweight fighter, and she's also very attractive. She's had a couple of big fights already. She fought Holly Holm. She lost that fight, but then her last fight she went up against Kat Zingano, and she did win by a head kick. Her toe actually went into Kat Zingano's eye, and I believe that her toenail lacerated Kat Zingano's eyelid, and so they stopped the fight. And then it was questionable. Kat Zingano's manager demanded that be overturned, that they needed to have an immediate rematch, and that that shouldn't be legal, similar to how a poke to the eye with with a finger. Although I disagree with that, even though it is very unfortunate. It's kind of like a freak thing. It also happened to one of Sage Northcutt's fights. But when you poke someone in the eyes with your fingers, that's something that you can control much better. When you throw a head kick and your toe or toenail goes into their eye, that's much, much harder to control. And that's why that is legal. It wasn't considered an illegal, poke to the eye or anything. But when we look at this one, Megan Anderson is 6 inches taller, so she'll have a massive height advantage. And she's got the 73-inch reach. Again, I guess her opponent has no arms or legs. And notice too, Felicia Spencer, and obviously fighting Megan Anderson, a female fighter, and yet they couldn't even give her a female shadow character. It's a man. Is she fighting a man? Is Megan Anderson fighting a man? I mean, it's ridiculous. There's no excuse for this. There should be at least, the outline of that. There should be a female character there. There's no excuse. No excuse at all. I'm going to go with Megan Anderson. And I think that she will win by first round knockout. All right, and in the co-main event of the evening, we've got Antonio Carlos Jr., Cara de Zapato, versus Ian Heinisch, the Hurricane. This is a decent fight. They have similar records. Some differences in height, 3-inch height difference. Apparently he doesn't have any arms or legs. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. Look at how many we've seen so far with no reach or leg reach listed. That matters, especially if you're a betting man or woman and you want to look at those stats. Sometimes you need that to help you make your decision, depending on who's fighting, what kind of fighters they are, and what the strategies might be. But we'll do with what we can. So look at that, 82% submissions. So this guy is a finisher. He's a great grappler. whereas Ian Heinisch has the majority of his from decision, 50%, but then submission 17% and TKO 33%. I'm going to go with Ian Heinisch by decision. And then in the main event of the evening, we've got Rafael dos Anjos versus the Motown Phenom, Kevin Lee. This is Kevin Lee's first fight at welterweight, which is big for him because, you know, cutting down to 155 was always very hard on him, you know, because he is a big guy as far as muscle mass goes. He has a good build. And so cutting to 155, you know, was draining on him, very depleting. And that was the same thing with RDA, even though he's only 5'8". Kevin Lee is really 5'9". I don't know why they're bumping these up now. They're listing him at 5'10". They did the same thing with Ally Aquinta when he fought Cowboy a couple weeks back. They listed him at 5'10", even though Ally Aquinta and Kevin Lee were always listed at 5'9". It's just funny. I noticed these things. But when we look at this, big difference in reach. 70-inch reach at 5'8". That's about average. That's what you would expect for a reach for him, for his height. But Kevin Lee has a freakishly long reach for his height. For 5'9", a 77-inch reach is freakish. I mean, it's great, you know. Conor McGregor has a good reach at his height. He's 5'9". He has a 74-inch reach. Well, Kevin Lee would have a 3-inch reach advantage over Conor. So he has a great reach. Unfortunately, with Kevin Lee, he still needs to work on his striking more. His striking still is not very crisp. He's still very stiff. He does not know how to utilize that reach to his advantage at all. It works for him when he's doing his wrestling and he's trying to grapple and wrap his arms around them to choke them, or, you know, to just maneuver around. But he really needs to work on utilizing his striking better so he can utilize that reach. Otherwise, you know, that gift that he got with that freakishly long reach was for nothing. So when we look at this, he does have 18% KO, 32% submission, and then 50% decision, whereas Kevin Lee, 41%, 47%, so almost half are by submission, and then a very low amount of TKO knockouts. The last one he had was against Edson Barboza, which was the fight before last. This is interesting because RDA even said that he needs to finish Kevin Lee and he needs a submission. And it's interesting because Kevin Lee is likely gonna wrestle. That's what he does, because RDA is the superior striker. And typically when Kevin Lee starts to get lit up, he starts to get hit a lot. That's when you see him going for that double leg or single leg, and he takes them down, utilizes his wrestling so that he can try to get ground and pound, or so that he can take their back and submit them. But he has to be careful because RDA is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the same as Tony Ferguson. And if you saw that fight for the interim lightweight belt, Kevin Lee ended up getting submitted by Tony Ferguson. He was having a lot of good success. He had fully mounted Tony Ferguson, and Tony almost looked like he was going to lose by ground and pound, but he was saved by the bell. And then later in the fight, in the second or third round, when he was on top, Tony Ferguson was able to apply a triangle choke, and Kevin Lee was submitted. So he has to be careful when he takes RDA down, because RDA is going to be waiting for that, and he's going to try to utilize his jiu-jitsu to submit him. So it'll be interesting to see how that is. It will also be interesting to see how much stronger Kevin Lee will be, where he had 15 less pounds to cut. And how will that affect the grappling? How will that affect the striking? How will that affect his energy and his cardio? You know, he gasses out in some of his fights. He gassed out in the previous fight against Al Iaquinta, and you know, he did well. He probably took the first 2 rounds against Al, but then 3, 4, and 5, especially 5, Kevin Lee had gassed out. You know, and that really hurt him, and Al was able to piece him up with his superior striking. So, looking into this, let's see. I am going to go with I want Kevin Lee to win this fight, but I just think that it's not a great matchup for him, especially his first fight in there, because RDA is the better striker, and then even Kevin Lee gets him down, which he will. RDA's black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he wants to get a submission, so I don't see this fight going Kevin Lee's way, even though I do think he'll be stronger, where he didn't have the big weight cut. But I'm going to go with RDA, and I'm going to say by 3rd round submission. So that's all of them. We've made our way through all the picks and predictions. So for those of you guys who have ESPN Plus, you can watch it. So, you know, definitely tune in if you're a true fan, right? If you're a true fan, tune in. It will be tomorrow night. Starts at 8 p.m. If you guys want to join my Facebook group, Octagon Beatdown, I'll put a link in that, and you guys can join, and then we can have discussion on there. You guys can post stuff, can talk about the fights. We'll keep up with updates on that. If you guys want to add me on Instagram or Twitter or PlayStation Network, it's RyGuy247, RY_GUI_247. And if you guys want to join my email list, I'll put a link for that too. Alright, so let's look forward to some good fights this weekend. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. Take care, guys.